Welcome to the Courageous Recovery Broadcast. I'm your host, Randy Mortensen. This is a weekly 25 to 30 minute program where we provide answers for your I don't know how. Whether you're dealing with recovery issues or emotions from a loss, or maybe life has just thrown you one more curveball than you were expecting, it's so glad to see that you're here. Depending on how you're watching this or listening to this, if there's a subscribe button, please take a minute and subscribe or leave notes or whatever the opportunity is. If there's a chat box, do that because we genuinely care about your feedback and your comments here. You're going to be blown away by the wisdom of my guest, Joe Templin, today. And if you are dealing with those recovery issues, please don't wait another day to seek help. You'll hear our contact information here in a few minutes. My personal website is randymortensen.com. That's Randy Mortensen, Mortensen. Later in the show, I'll talk more about the 21-point assessment that's on the front page there that will help you to determine whether you're struggling with a mild, moderate, or severe degree of alcohol abuse or drug use or pornography or whatever it is. So I'm more than happy to introduce you to the people in my network. But without further ado, Joe, it's great to have you here and see you all dressed up in your suit and tie, like the professional that you are, and all the way from the great state of New York. And anybody that's listened to this show knows that my usual first question is, what is it that you know today that you wish your 22-year-old self would have known?
And as you said, this is only a half-hour discussion, so I need to limit that in a lot of ways. But one of the things that I wish I had understood at 22 that I didn't really understand until a few years later is that life is not going to be riding around on a unicorn, eating cupcakes with rainbows and people bringing you bags of money. That you're going to get knocked on your ass over and over again by things beyond your control. And so you need to basically build reserves, whether it's financial, emotional, connections with individuals, spiritual, to be able to tap into to give you the greater resilience for this epic journey that we call life.
So you think a 22-year-old could handle all that knowledge?
I mean, I was, I think that they can. And part of
Okay.
it is, I've got a quote by Goethe up here on my board. Too many parents make for their children, life hard for their children by trying to zealously to make it easy for them with snowplow parents, with bubble wrapping them. I mean, I grew up in a small, farming community, so relatively insulated. I was so focused on my academics and my athletics and all that sort of stuff that, it didn't even occur to me to look beyond that. And so in some ways I was blindsided as I got a little bit older and got into relationships and, realized that not everybody is ethical and their word is their bond, and that they're going to try and take advantage of you and be extractive and screw you over. And doing your best and being a team player is not always what it takes to have success. And so I wish that I had learned that earlier on, because it would have saved me some scars and some headaches and some big losses.
Yeah. No, yeah, we've all too many of us have been down that same path, right?
Right.
Or it's a dark and not a straight path. It's got a lot of curves and yeah.
So I wished I had gotten some more bruises earlier in my life so that I didn't get as many scars later on.
So at what point did you start identifying yourself as being an author and a human Swiss Army knife?
So I have written most of my life. I actually started college at 13 because my parents said 12 was too young to start college. I was in the Hopkins program. I was actually studying communication and literature because I was so ultra advanced in my mathematics and science already. I was trying to round myself out and become a more complete human being. Obviously, I failed miserably. Um, but so, writing has always been part of who I am and what I do. It's just that I started ramping it up probably when I turned about 30 years old. I started writing for local newspaper. I wrote a column for young business professionals once a month. Then I started writing some more content. And then when I spun out on my own with my consulting group 15-ish years ago, I started writing, I've written about a dozen books, including my new one. I've written hundreds of blog posts, articles, magazine uh, articles. So I've really amped it up over time. And it's one of the things that has helped clarify my belief systems, my thinking, and allowed me to have more of an impact than I would through just an individual one-on-one, face-to-face sort of situation.
Brilliant, brilliant. And so with five siblings, where are you in the age in the birth order?
So I'm the second. My older brother Jay is my Irish twin. So, growing up in rural community with an Irish twin, large farm family, it lays a good groundwork, but it also teaches you a really good work ethic early on.
Okay, so I think I know, but I need to clarify. So an Irish twin means he's
That we are under 1 year apart. So he's
okay.
11,
That's what
he's
I was
11
just gonna
years
say.
and 14, 11 months and 14 days older than me.
I was just gonna say less than 12 months.
Yep.
So okay, that's what I thought you meant. But were you in the same grade, or was he a grade ahead of
He
you?
was a grade ahead of me, but we were in all the same math and science classes. So literally, we were lab partners together in chemistry. And so he was responsible for making sure that everything was pretty on the lab reports and all that sort of stuff. I drove the data collection and the calculations. He took care of the writing components. So it was actually a very good grouping because we were both good in particular areas, but he's incredibly artistic, very insightful writer. I was more on the hardcore math science side on that point. And so between the two of us, we made a really good team. And actually, we do to this day.
Very complementary to each other's skill sets and talents. It sounds
I'm
like.
going to make sure that he hears this actually, because occasionally I do say nice things about my brother.
Yeah. Well, and I'm the oldest, so I hope my younger brother will sometimes say something nice about me. But yeah, I'm the oldest of three, but having six, wow, and being number two,
Yeah, and
that's
then
sometimes a tough life.
plus there was all the friends who were basically were part of the family who were just always there, like Vinny and my best friend ZM, and so my best friend is one of 9 kids, and
Wow.
she's the same year as me, and then there's 3 younger ones in her family that align perfectly with my younger siblings. So literally, at any given day, there could be an extra 5 kids at my house, not including my 40 cousins.
Understood, understood. So just in checking out a little bit of your background, you battled even through some asthmatic challenges as well as speech impediments. I would have never guessed you had a speech impediment, by the way, sir. So you've done a great job with that. But what would you say to that parent who has maybe a son or a daughter dealing with some asthmatic conditions or speech impediment? What would you say to encourage? Because we've got listeners literally from around the globe here that they've got kids dealing with a couple of these issues. What would you say to encourage those parents?
That, one, cherish every moment, because when I was 10 years old, I actually legally died from my asthma. I was laying there on the table floating on up the lights and all that. So that explains partially why I am the way that I am. If you want me to lay on the couch and talk about the trauma, I can do that, but I'm
Wow.
fairly well integrated with it. But it, so I was not athletic at all. And I just started pushing it a little bit and a little bit more. I remember hearing the story of Johnny Weissmuller, the Olympic swimmer who later played Tarzan in the movies, and
Right.
he was severely asthmatic and he worked through it. Or if you can see up there, I got good old Teddy Roosevelt, because
Sure.
Teddy Roosevelt was severely asthmatic as a kid. And his father said, TR, you have the brains, but you don't have the body. And his physician actually prescribed whiskey and cigars to help him. Mine never did that. But he, through force of will, made himself into the iconic cowboy, rough rider, you know, athletic leader, dynamic individual that he became, while he still maintained his intellectual capacity and his belief system in terms of serving others. And so that's why Teddy Roosevelt is my favorite president, and also one of, the great influences on me, because of that similar shared type background, even though I will probably never win the Congressional Medal of Honor nor the Nobel Peace Prize.
Don't don't sell yourself short though.
If I get one in literature, I'll accept it. I can be just like Bob Dylan.
Right, right, right. Okay, so you've been fortunate to have three hooligans as you describe. What's been your greatest victory as a dad?
So, my, two of my kids are special needs. So that creates additional wrinkles and challenges. And my youngest, who is autistic and ADHD, is now in middle school. And he is actually doing incredibly well, not just academically, but socially, in terms of integrating and his taking responsibility for doing his own stuff. So each of my kids have their own issues that we have to struggle with. And as I tell my children, I hate them all equally. But as my youngest observed, yes, but you love us all differently. And it's like,
Right.
yes, okay. So, so they each have their own challenges that they have to deal with. But it's the fact that they've been able to, for the most part, face their unique challenges, and if not overcome, but at least deal and be moving in the right direction. And so our responsibility as parents is to develop our children into independent, responsible, good members of society. And so I see my boys on that track. And so, yes, I still worry about them all the time, because that's one of the things that you do as a parent. But I know that if I get hit by the bus tomorrow, that I have probably done enough to lay the groundwork for them, that they are going to be good human beings long range.
Well done, Dad. And what I haven't said this for a while, but a saying that I've said quite often is the best sermons are those you watch, not those you hear. And that's why it's so important for us as parents to model the behaviors that we desire,
No,
not try to shout, scream at them and reprimand them, but instead model
well,
what
there's
you
the old saying, preach the gospel, and if necessary, use words.
right,
So, I
right.
mean, children model off of their parents. And one of the problems with American society today is that people don't necessarily have enough good role models in their life. And so, with my kids, and I'm a Cub Scout leader, I volunteer with Boy Scouts, I do other volunteer activities. It is creating these models for some of these kids. And I've had kids who were scouts of mine 5, 7 years ago that I run into, and they are becoming good members of society. Some of them are in college, some of them are in high school or wherever. And that is the greatest pat on the back thank you that I can get, is seeing what they are becoming. And I'm not going to take the credit for it, but I helped provide another set of light for them to walk the right path.
Well, and as I've heard it described, we're just one slice of that pie, right?
Mm.
It is as far as molding and shaping that young person today. It could be parents, could be grandparents, aunts, uncles,
It's all of it. And so
or yeah,
having the right influences, and hopefully, as parents or uncles or aunts, what have you, we're giving them a good model so that they can then choose to be around better people. Because if you're choosing to be around criminals, guess what's probably going to happen to you long range?
Right. Right.
Versus if you choose to be around people who continuously challenge themselves on multiple fronts, you're going to develop that growth mindset and you're going to move along and have a much better environment long range.
Yeah, one of my friends talks about it. It's all about the focus, right?
Mm.
Whatever you focus on, that's where you will go, basically. And so, one thing I really want to make sure that we spend a decent amount of time on. You have a new book out, which so tell the listeners about the new book.
So it's called Everyday Excellence, a daily guide to growing. And it was the number 1 new release for professional development on Amazon Kindle. And it's designed to be a multivitamin for life because we all have multiple parameters in our world. We have our physical health, our mental health, our occupation, our relationships, our communication, our spiritual health. And too often we're missing various components of that. And so, what Everyday Excellence is designed to do is to every day in 1 to 3 minutes give the reader a cross section of those things. And in a lot of ways, it's meant to be like the Oracle of Delphi, where the individual is going to take what they're looking for out of it on that daily basis. And it will then help them to be slightly better. Because if we can be slightly better across multiple different parameters every single day, what's going to happen is over time, you're going to get that compounding and become much more successful, hence the nonlinear growth curve picture on the front, because excellence is a mindset that can then pour over into other areas. I mean, so like if you just start making the slightly better micro decisions every single day of, all right, I'm going to eat, 5 cookies instead of 10. I'm going to, because I like cookies, especially
Now,
long.
I was gonna say, how'd you know that was on my list today?
Right? So just slightly less. I'm going to have my running sneakers there. So I'm going to get up and I'm going to do a mile instead of, hitting the snooze bar twice. You know, I'm going to, I put the book where I see it. So I pick it up and read it and spend the 1 to 2 minutes instead of getting on my phone, doing something, dorking around. So those little things, but they start adding up and adding up and adding up. And over weeks and months, you can start noticing the difference. And if we can compound this excellence over a number of years, we can all be in a much better situation, which then allows us to be able to have greater influence and impact on those around us.
That's awesome. So the best place for us to put in the show notes is everyday-excellence.com. Is that where you want them
Yes,
to
sir.
go?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
And every single or 6 days a week, I put up a couple of quick micro blogs. So again, like 60-second, 90-second quick hits of insight and inspiration. There's links to the YouTube channel. This podcast will be living there so people can find it. So it's meant to be an entire environment to help the individuals and organizations continuously become more excellent.
So is this where we use the discount code CR2022 then?
Yes, sir. CR
Okay.
2022 will get people a 5% discount on any purchases of the books, electronic or the hard copies.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Let me just say a couple more words and then I have another couple of questions for you. So, folks, you've heard me talk before about our Lifestyle Champion cohort. That's the 8 week program where we actually use Zoom technology to do the 90-minute weekly meetings. The first 30 minutes is teaching or coaching. And the three phases of those 8 weeks is number one, evaluate. So we actually have some surveys to help you determine where you are today. And then the second phase is equip, actually gaining some tools and knowledge similar to what Joe talked about earlier, just not as intense and deep. And then the third is once you've ventured into this path of recovery, how do you enjoy the new you? So it's evaluate, equip, and enjoy. If you're interested in more information about that, you can just text champion to 66866. That's champion to 66866. And that's all that I have there.
Randy,
I'm
can I make a
excited.
comment on that actually?
Yes, please.
So having a accountability group like this where you're meeting regularly, where you're getting additional information and you're getting homework assignments and tools to work with is something that I've done within my consulting in terms of coaching professionals for decades. And the psychology behind it is absolutely incredible. It is literally one of the best investments because you continuously have to report to your peers and you're learning and growing from it. And so for your listeners, if you are not participating in this program, I'm going to say, why the hell not? Because this, as Jim Rohn said decades ago, the best investment that you can make is in yourself. And Patrick Bet-David says the same thing
Yeah.
in today's language. This is the sort of thing that is going to pay dividends to you for your entire life. So really look at this program.
Yeah, and just echo what you're saying too is the coaching industry is just growing by leaps and bounds because coming out of the last 2 years, people are understanding they can't do it by themselves.
No,
And I say often there's unity in community, right? It's part of community, and without it, we don't have accountability. We don't have people that can empathize with us even. And you're right. I, it's not really relevant to this discussion, but that's why I started Quest 180 up in the Midwest. The faith-based recovery ministry or faith-based recovery program. I don't like calling it a ministry. It's a program, and it's all about guidelines. It's all about boundaries. It's all about all of those things that, particularly those of us who have battled with compulsive and destructive behaviors, we didn't know what we didn't know, basically.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so, being able to draw upon the strength of others around you. I mean, Marcus Aurelius talks about this, 2,200, 2,100 years ago, that if you're a soldier and you need help, having one of your peers help pull you on up, there is nothing wrong with it. It helps you accomplish the mission. It was
Right.
as true 2,100 years ago as it is today in the
Right.
post-pandemic world. And
Yeah.
so the fact that society has moved into a more open position around this,
Right.
understanding that we're not perfect and we're not machines. And
Right.
sometimes we need a pat on the back, a hug, or maybe a kick in the butt to be successful is critical.
Good
And
word.
so, your program, my book, these are all wonderful tools
Yeah.
that people can tap into and utilize in whatever capacity makes sense for them.
Well, it's interesting you say what you just did because 10 days ago, a couple weeks ago, I guess, I actually taught on Genesis in the Old Testament.
Hmm?
Joseph. Joseph was exactly the guy who looked to others for support, who looked to other humans in his circle of influence to give him guidance. And so I talk about that. It's we think we're unique and we're unusual and these are new times, uncharted waters, and so on. No, it's not. There's people that have gone before us and suffered far greater things than you and I will ever suffer, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the perseverance, it's the excellence, it's the pursuit of, not perfection, but the excellence, right?
Yeah, and the appreciation for those moments. I mean, Viktor Frankl talks about working in the concentration camp and all the men stopping for a couple of seconds to appreciate the rainbow. Okay, these are people literally starving to death, being worked to death in the worst situation you could ever imagine. And that couple of seconds of God's grandeur being revealed to them was appreciated beyond belief. So we have those little pearls appearing every single day in our world if we can just open up our eyes and see them.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry about that, diatribe off to the side there.
No,
It
no, that's
happens.
I love no, that's anybody that's we've got listeners in 24, 25 countries. The network's like 20,000 people. So anybody that's listened to more than one episode knows that no two episodes are ever the same. And it's brilliant guests like you that keep people coming back for sure. And and it's there's so much difference today than 20, 30 years ago. Even, the
Mhm.
skirmishes in the world today, we had skirmishes when I was a kid. I'm of the Vietnam era, and my parents are the World War II era, and all of that. So what's going on in this world today is not that much different.
Yeah,
But yet, we've got this panic and this hysteria and so on. And instead of, as you said a minute ago, coming together, in community and trusting each other and finding family. We may not be blood relatives, but let's call each other family for
yeah.
sure.
Or as my niece asks, are they a blood relative or a love relative?
Oh, I like that. I like that. Interesting. So what we only have about 6, 7 minutes here,
Ah,
but
darn, okay, I'm having fun.
what you know, this has been great. So what have you seen over the last couple of years just with the people that you work with? What have been the one or two major challenges that you've seen that were different over the last couple of years than they would have been, say, 5 to 10 years ago?
One of the biggest things I'm seeing is what the Scottish psychologist Laird talked about with true self, false self. Because with social media, with the filters, with the gazillion dating sites, with the ability to create these alternative identities, people have the capability to just create these new universes for themselves, and not necessarily in a good way. It allows for duplicity, it allows for them to have falsehood. And so w- people don't understand and communicate because I don't know if it's a shame about uh, certain things that they feel or want to do or things like this, or it's a lack of commitment. And maybe it's because of the convenience factor that we've seen come on up in the past few decades where things have become so easy. I mean, when I was a kid 40 years ago, 1 out of 5 kids was obese or fat, as we called them back then. Now it's 25% of kids are overweight because things are too convenient. They've got entertainment there instead of being told to go outside and play on their own. They can just, calories are so cheap now that being obese is a sign of poverty in some ways, as opposed to of wealth.
Right.
So, like they don't know, roll down the window. We actually used to have to do that, and the car door weighed as much as the kid. So they can Google anything instead of having to go look it up. Minute rice takes too long for these people in a lot of ways. So everything is instant gratification and convenience as opposed to learning patience and having to work for things and understand the natural cycle and the investment of effort. And maybe this is one of the things from growing up on the farm that I learned is that you need to grind things out. You need to do the work. That stuff's going to take time. And sometimes you have a bad harvest. And so there's a lack of entitlement mentality from people who grew up in that sort of world that unfortunately is way too prevalent these days.
Yeah, good words. And you harvest the seed you plant,
Yes.
right? And just we have that agriculture background, the two of us do, and if you don't plant seeds, how can you expect anything positive to come from them? If you
Right.
plant
And
the seed,
planting the seeds is just one component of it. I mean,
I,
you got to do the back-breaking work to
right,
break the
right,
ground. You've got to, carry water if the sky's not going to provide it. You've got to
right,
fertilize things. You've got to pay attention. You got to weed it, just like we've got to weed our brain and remove the bad thoughts so that the good ones can flourish. Remove the bad people from our environment so that the good ones can flourish and influence us.
right.
So it's that entire mindset that the disconnect from the rural communities is experiencing because they're just like, oh, I turn the machine on and I get what I want.
Right. Well, and to add another element to the analogy of the seed, if you don't take the time to pull the weeds out, if you just clip them off, what's going to happen? The weeds keep coming back,
Exactly.
right? So if you really want to improve it, not only water it, but really serve that opportunity to have something flourish. You need to make the investment of your time. And sometimes for people, they think their time's more valuable than their money. And what I like to challenge, particularly men, we've all got the same 8,760 hours a year.
Yeah.
It's what you do with those hours that's really going to make set your story path, the pathway to your story,
I talk
for
about
sure.
the 86,400 seconds you get every day. And it doesn't matter if you're Bill Gates or somebody just getting out of college, you have the same allocation per day. And at midnight, it's gone. So, what did you do with it? Are you wasting it? Are you spending it? Or are you investing it?
Oh, that's good. That's good. So we're like sparking a lot of interest in our listeners, our viewers. I know that. So on Facebook, your page there is EDE with Joe. Is
Yep.
that the best
EDE
place?
for Everyday Excellence with Joe.
Every
That's me. Same thing
okay,
on Twitter, by the way.
okay, on Twitter, and then your website is www. I know it's HTTPS these days, but
Yep.
some of us still say www, right? Everyday-excellence.com. And on LinkedIn, they can find you at Joe Templin, Templin, on LinkedIn. Also,
Yes, sir.
any other connections that we should be mentioning for
Nope.
people to get a
The
hold of you?
website's the best because you can reach out to me directly there and interact with me on a regular basis.
Okay, all right. Well, let's wrap up here. And folks, you've heard me say before that overdose deaths have tripled since 1990. Right now, here in the United States, we're seeing more than 150 overdose deaths per day. It's costing our economy 800 plus $billion annually. So if you know someone who's struggling today, or maybe you're that person who's battling compulsive destructive behavior, or maybe your emotions are just out of balance, please don't wait another day to seek help. You can reach out to me at my office. Number is 321-757-HOPE. That's 321-757-HOPE. Or call someone you know and trust, because those who are dying today are husbands, wives, sons, and daughters of someone who loves them. So today's the day. Please don't wait another day. And it's been great, Joe, having you on here. I know these 25 to 30 minutes just flies by.
Yep.
What words of wisdom would you have for that dad who's maybe got a couple of kids that just aren't behaving the way he would like them to do? What words of encouragement would you offer to that dad as we sign off?
So I would offer what my mom reminded me on a regular basis was, one, be able to tell the kids, I love you, but I don't like what you're doing. And two, I brought you into the world. I can take you out and make another one look just like you. But just to remind them of that, because the bit of humor will help break the tension. But in the end, they're going to remember that you love them and that you're there to help them grow and become the men that they should be.
Great words. Great words. Well, folks, I hope you found this information helpful today. You can look for the replay to be available on the usual podcast online outlets like Buzzsprout, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and others. And be sure to check out Joe's new book on the website. You'll see it in the show notes down below. And also, he has a new YouTube channel that he's just launched. And so this has been great, Joe, spending some time with you. And to our listeners, I just want to say, have a blessed day and be extraordinary today.